Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by, once again coming your way with another one of my famed movie/Blu-ray reviews. Today I will be reviewing the movie in the most recent Blu-ray release of Orca, the Killer Whale. My history with Orca goes all the way back to 2006 or 7 when I blind bought the DVD. I can't remember if it was half-price books. For some reason, I may have possibly blind bought in the DVD brand new at Circuit City. Remember Circuit City? For some reason, I've got the memories of Circuit City. Sometime in 06 or 07, I for the very first time saw Orca, the Killer Whale, and of course Jaws being a film that I, like so many others, have grown up with. I actually didn't get to see any of the Jaws films in the theater except for the worst one, of course, Jaws the Revenge. I did end up seeing in a drive-in theater with my dad in 1987, but man, I can remember being even a kid back then and just being like, God, this is absolutely nothing, Jaws the Revenge. But obviously after the huge blockbuster success of the first Jaws film, which, yes, is 50 years old this year. Happy birthday to Jaws. Happy birthday indeed. After the huge success of Jaws in the theater, obviously Dino De Laurentiis, or however the hell you pronounce his name, wanted to capitalize on the scary killer. I was going to say killer fish, but a whale is not a fish. A whale is a mammal. As you know, the Jaws 3D is good for something. Like, it did teach me the difference between fish and mammals found in the ocean. So anything that's got like a blowhole in the top of its body and gets oxygen, and it's got a rear flipper that's like goes this way versus this way, that's not a fish. It's a mammal. And if you've got a rear flipper fin thing that's like that, then it's a fish. And if it's got gills, it's got that, and it's got a fish. So Jaws 3D did actually teach me something. But after the success of the killer, whatever you want to call it, creature in the ocean of Jaws, Dino De Laurentiis wanted to capitalize and make some moolah and do his own killer animal in the ocean story or movie. That brings us to Orca, the Killer Whale. Now, admittedly, I don't think I've seen this probably since, I may have watched it 2 or 3 times back in the day, 06 or 07, whenever the hell I got the DVD. And I'd kind of forgotten about this movie and the overall tone of the movie, which it's actually a really depressing movie for reasons I'll get into in this review here. But one thing I do want to mention is that it's kind of, I don't know if it was Dino De Laurentiis and company's way of saying, like, we're going to one-up Jaws by having, like, early on in the film, something's going on with the possibly Richard Harris character or whatever. Something's going on. I can't remember what's going on, but I can remember that there was this scene early on in the film where, like, a shark is coming for someone or poses a danger, and a killer whale comes in and just kind of headbutts the shark out of the water, and it splashes back into the water. So I don't know if that's Dino De Laurentiis and company's way of saying, we're gonna make our own killer animal in the ocean movie, and we're gonna headbutt Jaws the hell out of the water, and ours is gonna be so much better that our animal is so much more fierce than a great white shark that we're just gonna have our animal headbutt the great white shark right the hell out of the water and splash back into the water. So that's one thing that happens early on in the film. One can only assume that was like the whatever symbolism behind that scene. It was just like, oh my God, I remember that. And that was kind of funny. Yeah, so I mentioned that the overall tone of this movie, basically the whole just tone of this movie is depressing, and the reason why is because is it Richard Harris? I want to say Richard Harris. Is it Richard Harris? Yeah, Richard Harris' character is this fisherman or whatever the hell he is, and he, I guess, because he wants to make a big fortune and pay off does he want to pay off his boat? He might want to pay off his boat. Either way, I don't know whether his boat's paid for. Regardless, he wants to make a fortune by I guess, does he want to, I can't remember what the hell he wants with, like, these killer whales or whatever, but early on in the film, the whole reason of this film's existence is, I'm not going to spoil everything, I'll just simply say that he ends up, there's this happy frickin', I was going to say husband and wife, but they're not, whales don't get married, but there was this happy couple, male and female character, or not character, well, I guess they are characters, whale and, you know, a whale female and a whale male, male whale, whale female, whatever, just minding their own business until Richard Harris' character comes along. And I can't remember, like I say, it's been probably a week since I revisited this on Blu-ray, but I did take some notes. I can't remember. I think obviously he wants them for financial reasons or whatever. The woman ends up, or the female ends up being hoisted out of the water. The male killer whale gets his fin, I guess when he was shooting at the female. I can't remember. Like, it seems to me he didn't want to kill the female, but what did he want from the female? I can't remember. But shooting at the female, he nicks the top is a dorsal. Maybe the top fin is a dorsal fin, possibly. He nicks that to kind of give this, you know, this great white killer whale this discernible, you know, recognizable feature, so we know it's the same one. Kind of a, you know, a decent plot point or whatever, but it nicks the male's dorsal. I think it's the top fin. If it's not the dorsal, it's the top fin, giving it that look. And at the same time, I can't remember. They end up. I'm not going to spoil all the details in regards to what happens with the female, because some of it is just so it's so depressing. I don't even want to talk about it. Another thing that worries me about this movie is it's like a Italian production, Dino De Laurentiis, and we all know, if you've seen Tintorera, Tiger Shark or whatever, a movie from, I don't know, was it the late 70s, early 80s, something I got on VHS a long time ago. You know, Italian movie makers have absolutely no qualms about, you know, presumably slicing up, you know, animals, you know, ocean animals, and cutting sharks in half, or, you know, killing real sharks and real fish and this and that in the ocean to make a movie. It just seems like they got no qualms doing that. So part of me, I didn't look in, partly because I don't want to know, but I didn't look into it online. You might be able to find out, but I don't know if they actually like kill and injure real whales, or, you know, ocean life in the making of this movie, because there's a scene later on that I guess I'll get into later on. But I'll just say, I'm not gonna, because it's so depressing, like I'm not gonna, that's what I mean, like there's an aspect of, you know, hoisting, you know, trying to kill the female whale and hoisting her up that is so like depressing that I kind of forgot all about, for reasons which now I understand. Why would you want to remember? But I just worry about, like I say, how much of the carnage, on-screen carnage in this movie is actually real, and if we're filming real mourning, you know, whales that are in mourning and doing a real funeral procession. It sounds weird, but if you see the movie, you know what the hell I'm talking about. So that, you know, seeing this again, you know, I'm not big on killing animals for the sake of making movies, and, you know, if that's going on in this movie, not keen on that. If it's not, that's a relief. Either way, I guess I'm not the biggest fan of this movie, having revisited it again. But I'll just simply say, you know, because of, you know, the ill treatment of the female whale, the male killer whale now has this vendetta to basically kill the Richard Harris character, the main fisherman guy. And what's interesting about this movie, one thing that I will, you know, give it props for is that it's kind of interesting how Jaws, obviously the shark is the, you know, quote unquote, you know, bad guy or whatever, the, you know, wrecking havoc on innocent beachgoers. What's interesting about this movie is the human character, the main character, Richard Harris character, is like the bad guy, and the killer whale is like the good guy. So it's really an interesting, you know, swap of from Jaws to this movie, and it's almost like it's kind of interesting how you're, in a way, kind of rooting for the killer whale. Watching this movie, you can either be on the side of the killer whale, or if you're a person who doesn't like whales, you can be on the side of the asshole Richard Harris character, who injured and may have done more than injure his female companion. So it's an interesting kind of a movie, honestly, and that's probably the most interesting aspect of it is the moral dilemma of, you know, Richard Harris having, I guess, it's confusing because it's like he talks about it being a mistake, but then he shoots her deliberately, so how can it be a mistake? And I guess there's elements of it that I won't go into that obviously he didn't necessarily know about in advance or whatever. And then, of course, to give it some really extra cheesy drama, they have this little side story where Richard Harris's wife and child were killed by a drunk driver. So it's like Richard Harris did to the whale what was done to him, and it's just, you know, the male whale killing his family. I guess I kind of spoiled some stuff that I didn't intend to spoil, but oh my God. So you get the drift. But that aspect I think is a little lame, like, you know, just having that shared history between these, you know, the Richard Harris character and the male killer whale. It's like, oh my God. So that whole premise of like having this tragic thing, you know, happen to the happy whale, you know, couple or whatever, expecting parents, and you know, then you know, Richard Harris is depressed the whole rest of the movie because of what happened. The whale's depressed the whole rest of the movie because of what happened, and the viewer, as a viewer, you're depressed the whole rest of the movie because the whole movie is depressing, and just seeing the, you know, whatever happened. Of course, what the hell's her name? Charlotte Rampling is like the, I guess, more or less female eye candy. Well, along with Bo Derek. What's funny is they have Bo Derek in this movie, but I don't think, is this before, this is I think maybe before Bo Derek kind of became more of a household name in movies. Like, wasn't she in a movie by the name of 10 or whatever? But what's funny about this movie is, you know, arguably Charlotte Rampling and Bo Derek are kind of the female eye candy in this movie, and it's not like, you know, just because this movie takes place on the ocean, fishermen and all this, doesn't mean it's like tropical or whatever. You don't see Bo Derek, I don't believe, in like a bikini or anything. So it's not like she's ever necessarily even scantily clad or sexually clad or whatever. And the Charlotte, what is it? Charlotte Rampling character is kind of interesting. You know, it's like she doesn't like the Richard Harris character, but she kind of does. And later on towards the end of the movie, there's no sex scene, but she does go as far as to warm him, you know, come over here in bed with me and I'll warm you. I think that's the gist of the you know, the line or the scene or whatever. So this is just a really weird kind of a movie that basically exists in this just realm of depression, and the whole thing is more or less just morose and depressing, and it's like, God damn it, I don't remember. Like, that's why I saw it 2 or 3 times than when I initially blind bought it, and why I've never seen it since is because it's just depressing. Throughout the course of the movie, there's one point where Richard Harris and company kind of park his boat in this one, you know, shipping area somewhere. Is it in Canada? I don't remember. It doesn't really matter. But, you know, since the Orca has this vendetta against this, you know, Richard Harris character, he can, you know, he saw him. And what's so funny is, you know, I mean, how does the Orca know that Richard Harris is the one who ordered, like, the female whale shot or whatever? It's, you know, it's all contrived nonsense for a Jaws ripoff movie, but, you know, the Orca is so smart, possibly smarter than humans, which this is not a very big stretch to be smarter than humans, but, so in such keen eyesight, I don't think they said this, but just the way they do it with, you know, the cinematic, you know, showing a close-up of the whale's eye or whatever, he knows, you know, Richard Harris by sight, and he's going to follow him and make his life hell until he gets what he wants, which is a mono, out in the ocean. And so as a result, the killer whale, when Richard Harris and company park his boat in whatever harbor they're parked at, throughout the course of days or whatever, the Orca will sink this ship, sink that ship, just cause all kinds of havoc in the harbor area until, you know, basically until the people that live there basically kick Richard Harris character out and say, you know, this killer whale's doing this to our, you know, ships in our harbor because of you, Richard Harris. He doesn't say Richard Harris, but I don't know Richard Harris's character's name in this movie, so I'm just calling him Richard Harris. But basically, as a result of all that carnage that the killer whale is inflicting because Richard Harris is at their port or whatever, causes some, I can't remember which character, oh, probably the Charlotte Rampling character, I would imagine, in her, you know, British accented, you know, she knows she's smart because she's got a British accent in her voice, and her female wisdom says, well, the Orca wants to go out into the ocean and fight you, you know, man to whale in a one-on-one battle to the death. That was like Australian, whatever, in her whatever accent she's got, British/Australian accent. she convinces Richard Harris' character to, I guess, leave that port where the whale has already caused so much damage. Oh, one of my favorite scenes in this movie is basically Richard Harris is renting, and Bo Derek and I guess her boyfriend character are renting this house that's on stilts, you know, conveniently, so just on stilts sitting over the ocean on some harbor house or whatever. So my favorite scene is, or one of them is probably the scene where the vengeful Orca causes, is knocking down all the house stilts, so the house topples and turves and goes like this. And the Bo Derek character, who got injured previously, has got a cast. She's got one cast over one of her legs. During this scene, I think the other leg is got shorts on, so you can actually see the other leg. It's so funny how the sex symbol chick in this movie is the least sex symboled out. It's like some gay guy made this movie and is completely unaware of Bo Derek's whatever physical appearance, and we're gonna have this sexy young chick, but we're gonna make her really sexy by putting her leg. She's the only character in this movie who ends up with one of her legs in a cast. Ooh, and I think there's even some makeout, brief scene where Richard Harris comes in the bedroom and sees them making out when she's in the bed. Her and her boyfriend, and she's got the cast on one of her legs, and it's whatever. But what I was commenting on, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but what's so funny about the Bo Derek character, not funny, well, it's a fake movie, so it's funny. If it were real, it wouldn't be funny. But where she's already got injured in a previous, accident in the movie, so she's got one leg in a cast. So during this scene where the house gets basically topsied and turvied and slanted, and she's sliding out a hole, and she get this, you couldn't make this up, but someone did, because they did it in the movie. But so she actually gets the leg, I gotta try to make this understandable, the leg that's got a cast on it actually gets bitten off by the Orca. I don't think that's supposed to have killed the Bo Derek character. We just hear through dialogue that her whole life is ruined because of as the movie wears on, Richard Harris just is more and more self-pity, feeling sorry for himself, and kind of cheerleaded on by the Charlotte Rampling character. Is that it? Charlotte Rampling, yeah. And it's just oh, what have I done? I think he's Irish or whatever. What the hell's his name? Richard Harris. Oh, good Lord, what have I done? Nice Irish. I'm not good at Irish accents, admittedly, but something like this happened to me. The drunk driver killed my wife and child, and what have I done to this poor whale, and whatever. But yeah, so he's a lot of. I mean, the whole movie is basically depressing, and the Richard Harris character just self-pity and feeling sorry for himself for the predicament he's caused, and this and that. So yeah, Bo Derek gets. If you haven't figured it out yet, Bo Derek gets the broken leg that's in the cast bit off, which is just, I wonder how many people in the audience laughed at that. It's just me and Keith laugh at quote unquote questionable things that maybe mainstream society wouldn't normally laugh at. I swear to God, if we were teenagers or something and back in the late 70s watching this movie in the theater, we would have been the only two that would have laughed at her getting her leg that's in a broken leg that's in a cast bitten off. It's just oh my God. Anyway, I spent way too much time on that. That's probably my favorite scene, and a big part because of that eventuality. How funny is that? Not in real life, but since this is a fake movie, it's funny. After all that carnage happens at the sinking the two boats and blowing up the pier, blowing up the area where all the livelihood of the fishermen are, and this and that, blowing up this and that and who knows what, and destroying that house on stilts. I'm sure Charlotte Rampling's you better get out there and fight the shark mano a mano, and give the shark what he wants, or not the shark, Jesus Christ, the the Orca. Go out there and fight to the death. Fight the Orca, give him what he wants, and Richard Harris has to give in and basically do that, leave that port that is now pretty much destroyed and blown up and completely destroyed. All the hell is going to go bankrupt, God, you know, you really hate the Richard Harris character by this point in the movie. And you're actually, as I know, when I rewatched this, I was like, I'm definitely rooting for you know, the Orca. And, you know, the Orca basically leads Richard Harris to the where he wants to lead him to, which is this, I kind of think that the end, you know, the locale or the location where it's kind of like, is it the North Pole or something? I think that's a little lame. Like, I don't know. It just, yeah, let's lead you to the North Pole and have a freezing, frigid battle to the death. And I'm not going to spoil, you know, the outcome. I will simply say that I'm glad the outcome is the way it is, and it's kind of deserved. We'll just simply say I probably spoiled the outcome, but it's surprising how, honestly, and if they made this movie now, I'm not too sure the outcome would be the same. But it is surprising how they did have the outcome, or what outcome ended up happening. I probably, you know, gave too much away, but that's all I'll give away. My star rating, so that's Orca, the killer whale. Oh, I should also say that this movie, because it's Italian and a Dino De Laurentiis movie, it's actually got music by the famous composer whom I don't know how the hell to pronounce his name, the Ennio Morricone or whatever the hell his name is. And, you know, I don't claim to necessarily be on the, you know, Ennio Morricone, you know, fanboy bandwagon. I do think that, you know, the stuff he did for westerns and stuff, spaghetti westerns, is probably famous stuff. And yeah, the theme for this movie is just, I guess, God, you just hear it so often that it gets kind of, I guess the reason I don't really love this theme is because it's kind of this somber theme, and because it represents the somber mood of the movie. And yeah, so it just keeps reminding you, you know, every time the theme plays, which seems like it's often, it's like it's a lot, it just reminds you of the somber, you know, situation of the movie or whatever. So although the theme might be a good, you know, classic kind of Ennio Morricone, forgive me if I'm butchering the hell out of that name, but it might be a, you know, one of his famous kind of, you know, themes that sound like his, you know, it sounds like his work and stuff. It's because of the somber aspect of this movie. It's just a somber, basically, theme. My star rating for this movie, I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, I guess I can go straight down the line and just give it 2 stars out of 4 stars. It might be a little high of a rating, honestly, for as somber and depressing as this movie is. And, you know, having like 2 quote-unquote kind of sexy chicks, and like I say, it seemed like it was directed by a gay guy who has no interest in the female form. Like you've got, I mean, I guess the one scene towards the end where Charlotte Rampling offers to warm the, you know, what the Richard Harris character, I guess she's a little kind of scantily clad, but whatever. You know, they don't do anything with Bo Derek's attire that they really should. I mean, the only time I think she's in shorts is when she's got cast on one leg, so it's just like one leg showing, and it's just like, yeah, well, that's kind of sexy. I don't really go in for women with casts on. I don't know what kind of sexual identity that is, you know, the broken limb in a cast sexuality, like, ooh, you know, the more limbs in casts, the more hot I get. But that'll be the review for the movie itself. Now on to my review of the most recent, it's still kind of recently released Blu-ray by Kino Lorber of Orca, the Killer Whale. As you can see on the back here, brand new HD master from a 4K scan of the 35mm original camera, negative exclamation point. As you can see, special features, audio commentary by film historians, this guy, that guy, and that guy, audio commentary by author/film historian Lee Gammon. So you've got 2 commentaries from 4 film historians, yeah, and then theatrical trailer. Of course, because it's a Kino Lorber release, there's more than just the trailer for Orca. It's also got trailers for other stuff as well. They often put trailers for other titles that they also have out that kind of go along with the time, the era, and or subject matter that this movie is, you know, whatever. And also like other trailers for other Richard Harris movies as well. I did this because I was had to go figure out his name, but then when I went like this, I remembered his name. But it wasn't a nervous, emotional tick. It was just what it was. Speaking on the Blu-ray version of the new 4K scan of the original negative, I can say is, as much as the movie was actually kind of depressing, this Blu-ray presentation is absolutely stupendous. If you know anything about me, if you've been hanging around my channel for any amount of time, you'll know that I'm a grain guy. I love my film grain, and this 4K scan of Orca, the killer whale, just beautifully, even in normal standard high definition, that makes sense. But even this Blu-ray presentation of the 4K scan shows the grain and dark scenes, particularly night scenes, dark scenes of those kind of scenes, or those kind of shots. The film grain is represented faithfully and wonderfully. Colors very vibrant. Just the contrast is very vibrant. Was it last year that I reviewed the Blu-ray of Kino Lorber's new 4K scan, the Blu-ray version of Leviathan, and was very surprised to see how grainless the movie was, or the film scan was, and I didn't know why the hell there's like little to no grain in the 4K scan that Kino Lorber did of Leviathan. I was thrilled to see that their 4K scan of in Blu-ray presentation of Orca, the killer whale, has just wondrous film, intact film grain, wondrous colors, wonderful contrast, wonderful pretty much everything visually. I was as depressing as the movie is, I was delighted that the video quality, or the image quality on this new 4K version, restoration, whatever you want to call it, by Kino Lorber, even on normal high definition Blu-ray, this movie looks amazing. On the audio front, we get two audio tracks, a 2-channel track, and also a 5.1 mix. I don't know a whole hell of a lot about the history of this movie. I don't know if it was released in theaters in stereo at all. For some reason I have this idea that this movie very well might have come out in theaters in its first home video incarnations with mono sound, being a movie from the late 70s. Maybe the 5.1 mix was done recently, or at some point when the first, I think this came out on Blu-ray initially before this Kino Lorber Blu-ray, so maybe at some point, this 5.1 mix of the original, presumably original mono audio was done. I only watched this on a little kind of TV, and so I just heard the little TV speakers, so I can't really comment on the 5.1. It kind of does, when I'm sitting here talking about it, it kind of makes me interested to try the 5.1, but I mean, for a movie that is just depressing and you don't necessarily ever want to see again, I don't know what the hell. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna probably want to try the 5.1 anytime soon, but I can only, as I said, I can only assume this was originally distributed in the theaters in mono audio, and just some point in the 21st century, whether it was for the first DVD or the first Blu-ray or something, someone 5.1'd this movie. As I said, not having heard it or that version of it, I can't really comment on that. The Blu-ray release I got does come with a slipcover. I can only assume this is a version or original poster art, or a version of original poster art. Doesn't blow my ass off, but if it's original poster art, and give them props for using that slipcover artwork here. If you've seen the slipcover, which you just have, you'll have an extraordinary sense of deja vu looking at the cover underneath. The slipcover, as you can see here, has the original kind of Orca the killer whale font, and it so often is the case, the actual Blu-ray disc spine slip, little piece of paper that slips into the Blu-ray case, has the standard boring Kino Lorber font. So what they do, if you're fortunate enough to get a Kino Lorber slipcover as of late, you'll get the actual original font of the movie, which is really cool, because one of the things that I dislike about Kino Lorber is their boring standard font that just goes on their spines regardless of what the hell the movie is. So this is the best of both worlds. If you want to display the original movie font, you can do so. If not, you can also do that. So I don't know who the hell wouldn't want to display the original movie font, but some might not. If you've seen any other of my Kino Lorber Blu-ray reviews, you might know that I'm not a huge fan of the artwork, or the lack thereof artwork, on their discs, but they put out a lot of titles that otherwise wouldn't be on, glorious Blu-ray presentations. So, I'm not going to give them too much crap for their lackluster art on their discs, because, if it weren't for them, a lot of movies, a lot of classic movies we wouldn't be able to enjoy on Blu-ray. Guess that about does it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, we'll catch you on the next video.